I'm Kathianne Lewis. It's great to have you here at the Center for Spiritual Living. There's a few things I want to say. First of all, if you have a smartphone and you want to sign in, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get loved on. So if you're afraid of love, you may leave now. It's going to get really scary. You're still here. Great. So sign in, let people know where you are. The next thing that I want to say is that if after this service is over, you seem to resonate with what we're talking about and the way that it's said, because a lot of people say the same thing, but the way, our way, might be your way. If it resonates with your heart and soul, I encourage you to be part of our virtual community, and you can fill out a card that looks like this. It's a connection card. And this will put you on our email list. And our snail mail list, you'll get maybe 3 things a year in the mail. And a spiritual practice from me once a week. And what that means is something to do during the week. Like, okay, how do I maintain this connection I feel at church? Well, you'll have a practice. And then we will always let you know what's coming up. For instance, Deepak Chopra. Oh, and by the way, we're half sold out. Like, it's weeks away and we're half sold out. So just in case, you might want to take advantage of that. Things like that. So those are the 2 things I wanted to say. And then we also have a tradition. And the tradition is we honor people who are having a birthday because we believe every person is important. In the grand scheme of things, every person born is important. So if it's your birthday, stand up or wave your hand. There's a birthday, birthday. Back there's a birthday. Back there's a birthday. See, this is life. Thank you for letting us, you stand up, you say, there's a good for me, and sometimes we look the other way. Just saying. Isn't it true? Isn't that what happens? And then your good taps you on the shoulder and says, I'm here. So thank you for letting us see that. It's good. You know, it's time to laugh and to celebrate life, but life takes many forms. And one of the things about life is that it's rich. There's ups and downs, and time for rejoicing in someone's birth, and then sometimes for sorrow. So we usually move into silence, but today, this silence is dedicated to Sue West, who is a prayer practitioner at our center, and she made her transition last week, which is kind of it's a euphemism for she's done with her body. And she moved on to, I know she lives, but she's not visible to me now. So we'll be celebrating her life at a memorial service on Saturday at 2 o'clock, if anybody is a friend of Sue's. But for right now, this silence is for Sue.
And so I ask you to join with me in this prayer, simply by breathing in together and releasing. That we may connect in together in that inward place of divine love, divine intelligence, this place where all life is connected. And we're each such perfect and unique aspects of life. There is a principle of physical life, which is our form changes. Our form comes and goes. And yet we know together that life itself is always eternal. And so in this moment, particularly where the practitioner body is releasing one of its own, we were releasing practitioner Sue West to her next greater to be. We know this truth so deeply, that we are each on such a wonderful spiritual journey that grows and evolves and changes. And that we have gathered together, we have attracted each other to be in this spiritual community together, so that we may love each other and witness each other and grow together and evolve together. And even if Sue West was not in your life, we take this moment to honor anyone who has been dear to you, who has moved on, who has changed form, who has gone into whatever that next evolutionary phase of life is for them. We honor them and their life and their passage and their connection to your life. For this is the joy of living in spiritual community. That through the ups and downs in life, the twists and turns, the valleys, the mountaintops, we have a place to come and be loved and seen and supported and held. And we may do that for each other when someone needs that from us. And so in this moment, I honor this community in all that we are and all that we are evolving to be. A place of joy and freedom and deep love. And so I know that this service unfolds so beautifully in prayer and song and word today that each one of us hears and feels just what is perfect for us in our next step in our journey. And so it is with the deepest gratitude that I join you in knowing this morning. And so it is.
It's my great honor to introduce to you someone that you all should know. Not that I'm trying to tell you who you should know, but she's always an inspiration to me, Karen Schiller.
In 2008, I walked into these doors. I've been a religious science student for like 20 plus years, but never came to CSL here in Seattle. I walked in here in 2008, morbidly obese, about to become on medication for diabetes. I broken heart. I ended a 14-year relationship, and I was about to lose my house to the bank. But I had a deep faith in God. So I knew this was my community that I was willing to have support me. So where did I start? Because these obstacles looked huge. They had been in my life for all my adult life and since as a child. I started putting in prayer requests. I started asking this community to hold the vision for me when I couldn't hold it for myself. I started taking classes. I started out with Beyond Limits, spiritual practices, self-mastery, great, phenomenal teachers, let me tell you. I actually took a prosperity class with Reverend Michael, and I learned about tithing as a spiritual practice and how I can put God in charge of my finances. Who knew? And then in Inward Journey with Kathianne, I realized there was a good for me and I ought to have it. And there was a daily practice to help me through some major obstacles in my life. And service, I didn't know how to be of service, so I asked God to help me find that place. Well, in the Gourmet for God event one year, I bid on a Domino's party at Barb. Is Barb here? Hi, Barb. And Barb Richards' house. And I sat with Kay and Lance Carlton, and they talked to me about stewardship and being a steward. And that means you count the offering. Service. I'm a finance geek. I can do that. So God found the way for service for me that felt like I could serve my community. And I wanted to go back on the classes, the small groups, having those people support me, my prayers supporting them and their prayers supporting me was huge, the small groups. I just kept showing up. And I soon began to realize I had false gods. I went for food to cover up my pain instead of God. I went to relationship to help me feel lovable when I couldn't love myself. Oh my gosh, I held them hostage instead of God to love me. I went to money to buy love so I wouldn't be abandoned or feel that sense of abandonment, but they were false gods. What I really needed was my true God to come into those places that I held very tightly. Through these processes and practices, I had several miracles. One, I lost over 100 pounds and reversed diabetes. Thanks. I'll take that in. Number 2, I found my life partner here at CSL. We just got married on Kauai. I realize it's a heavy burden on them to make me feel loved, and that really is God's job. And I can accept the divinity in them and how to appreciate as God is my primary relationship. And for the first time in 2014, I'm completely debt-free. So, thanks, Lyndon, tithing God over here. But I want to tell you the biggest miracle was the advice of my practitioner. I went home. She said, Karen, look in the mirror at home. Say you're beautiful and you love yourself. Karen, you're beautiful and I love you. I could not look in the mirror in 2008, and today I can. That love from my higher power is what transformed those conditions. The miracles were the outpicturing of that, but the true was that love. And I'm beginning to accept that magnificence that I am in a very humble place by the grace of God and the love and support of this community. I found that I could love that which was unlovable and which I thought was beyond redemption. So enough about me. I want to talk briefly about you. So if you have a part of you that feels unlovable and beyond redemption, let us help you. Let us pray for you. Put a prayer request in. There's 50 to 60 prayer practitioners in this community who want to pray for you. About 30 of us are getting ready to graduate. Praise the Lord. Let us pray for you. Classes, pay as you will, the core classes. So it's based on your financial ability to pay. We're opening the doors more to share the good news. Praise Jesus. I'm getting really religious here. I love it.
Hallelujah, Buddha.
Hallelujah, Buddha, yes. And service. We have so many opportunities for you to serve our community. And if you don't know how to serve, do what I did. Ask God to help you find the way. Don't make it hard. Don't make it hard. Let God support you. Let this community support you. And finally, my God is an awesome God. And because I know that for me, I know it for you. Let us hold a vision for you when you can't see it for yourself. I couldn't see it in 2008. So I always had the deep faith in God, but now I have the faith of God. And I have that because of this community. Thank you.
Yay, thank you. I like jewelry, and I'm wearing a bunch of yarn. Some of others are wearing yarn. A few of us started on a 40-day program of Lent. Lenten, it just means 40s, 40. It's no big mystical anything. I looked it up, it means 40. So, where some people are giving up a luxury or something that's a treat for themselves for 40 days, we're giving up something that's also a luxury, which is negative thinking. I think you've all heard, no, we can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. Well, I don't know what your negative thought would be, but what I've noticed is if I give up the negative thought, then what's natural, what's normal starts to show up. So what I want to do, and many of us are doing, is giving up some sort of thought or process that has held us back or kept us confined in such a way that love couldn't flow through. So this is the season of love. It's also the season leading into Easter, which I believe is really a story about love. So today I want to talk about love in a new way, even though I'm going to use words you've heard before. How many of you have heard the phrase, love your neighbor? Yeah, just where have the rest of you been? Were you born in this continent? How many of you have heard love your neighbor? Come on. Thank you. Go back to myself now. I'm going to talk about love your neighbor, but perhaps in a way you haven't heard it before. And to do that, I'm going to be using some verses out of the New Testament, and I'm going to be using verses that are accredited to Jesus. But before I do that, I need to let you know what I believe about Jesus, because otherwise, just saying the word Jesus will put some people in this room in such a spin, they won't hear the good stuff I'm going to tell you. So, because people, how many of you know you go there? You hear one word and you're, and by the time you get back like a boomerang, I'm done. And everybody else has had a really good inspirational talk. So let me share with you what I believe about Jesus. I shared this with my group, my class, What Would Jesus Do? And I had to, because finally people were saying, why are we studying this? Well, because wisdom is wisdom. Do you know it's easier in the Northwest to put a Buddha in your foyer than a statue of Jesus or St. Francis? Boy, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's also, haven't even heard of that. Okay. Just trying to see who I'm talking to here. There's some great stuff. He was a wisdom teacher. A wisdom teacher means someone at that time who was Jewish, who was using the spiritual tradition of the time to bring wisdom, which is an aspect of God, into the culture. He was a wisdom teacher. So this is what I believe. Now, you don't have to believe it, but I'm going to tell you what I believe. So, one, Jesus was a historical figure that a great myth was created and wrapped around so that deeper truths could be presented in such a way that they would go through time. If even a portion of what was written about Jesus is true, he must have been a wisdom teacher that discovered and taught great life principles to the people of his time. Like many great spiritual teachers or mystics, he could comprehend the complex workings of the universe and put these complex ideas into simple to-dos for the people around him for the purpose of making their lives better. For the purpose of making their lives better. If Bible scholars have shown over and over again, he didn't talk so much about the future. That was added later. What he talked about is, if you want a good life, if you want heaven, which is within, do these things. If you want heaven, do these things. The next thing is that as Jesus fully embodied the Christ, which means Messiah or Savior consciousness, he became known as Jesus Christ. But it was the consciousness that we can all embody. We can all have what Ernest Holmes called God in us, or Christ consciousness. If we live from the above stated consciousness, or spirit, we will think, act, and behave differently than if we weren't in that consciousness. Now, so before I move on, I'll give you an example. How many of you have ever fallen in love? Let's see some hands. Great, praise God. It could have been with a person, it could have been with a baby, it could have been with a pet. But you know when you just feel love. When you feel that love, don't you act differently? Yes. That love gets over everything. Somehow people are nicer. Somehow you're more patient. Somehow you are kinder. And it's because you're living from a different place. So we all got that? So that's the same thing as finding that center of God's self within yourself. When you find that and living from it, you act differently. You react differently. You will be a different person, like you were born again. It's not mysterious. Now, here's the other part of it. It's the other part of the formula. That consciousness will change your actions, but if you change your actions, it'll be easier to discover that consciousness, because they really are tied together. So he gave to-dos to-dos to help find that consciousness. And one of those to-dos, well, let me read it, comes from Matthew. I'm sorry, Susan. Not yet. Stay there. Okay. She might have thought we were calling her again. Hello? She's off. She's off deciding on her new future. Really. So one of them said, tempting him, Master, what is the greatest commandment of the law? And Jesus said unto them, and I want to get back to commandment in a moment. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So first of all, I just want to put this a little bit in context with about commandment. When the word was used in commandment 2,000 years ago, like the 10 commandments, they weren't commandments. We made commandments like commandments. We put that textual influence on it. That's not how they had it. They were suggestions. In fact, actually, the literal translation of commandment is 10 things. Now, that's pretty neutral, isn't it? Just 10 things. So all this thing about commandments, how many of you, when you feel like you're being commanded, want to get all backed up? We react to that. It was just so smart. The wisdom teachers weren't commanding. They were saying, you want heaven? I suggest this. The best thing to get there, to get you into a heavenly state of mind would be this. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, and with all thy soul. Or soul and mind. I'm not sure how they might have got it mixed up. I'm sorry. And the second is like unto it. Love thy neighbor as thyself. So let's break this down a little bit. And I'm going to use words from Aramaic. I love Aramaic. I love get into it and it's like, because Middle Eastern tradition had so many depths of meaning. And unfortunately, when things were translated into Greek, they had a different culture. So a word that might be used in the Middle East, around the Mediterranean, around that area, around Palestine, would not necessarily translate, or I guess it wasn't Palestine then, it was Judea. Sorry. Please no letters later. That was not a political statement. That was my stupidity. Anyway, the Greeks had a totally different mindset. So they would take a word and maybe not translate it the way that it was actually meant to be translated. And then it was into Latin, and then finally into English. So back to the Aramaic. I like to go to and be instructed by a man named Lamsa who translated the New Testament, in fact, the whole Bible, out of a Bible that was never put into Greek and all the ramifications thereof. So it puts a new slant on things. For instance, commandment. It's just 10 things. Let's break down the rest of it. Lord. I always kind of always felt when I said Lord, it like I was supposed to go like this. Lord, my God. This is amazing. The root word of the word that was translated later to Lord, and then on all these things that we have gotten Lord out of, was mar, which was an elemental principle of light that shines through all creation. There's no hierarchy in it. It was life itself. The animation of life itself. Lord God, the Lord is your God, is nothing more than the animation of life itself is God. And you shall love that spark, that essence, that isness, that thing that's in everything, with all your heart and with all your mind and with all of your soul. Whoa! What you're loving is right here in front of you. It's not far off. It's not something you got to call to and go into the court, and bow. It is life itself. Where's God? Where's life? Where life is, God is. So if you're alive, part of that essence is in you. What that means is that you can look at anything and be filled with awe. First service, two of our photographers that I see a lot on Facebook and have also had galleries out here were in the service, and Anel and Jani. And I am always amazed at what they can capture and how they can make anything look so beautiful. And it gives me a sense of awe. And recently, I was reading that studies have proved that the more awe we have, the lower our inflammation rate will lower. Like it reduces what ages us and gives us disease. Awe. It's like recognizing life, and what you get is greater, healthier life. What a system. What a system. Amazing. So what does that boil down to? I guess it means that we could move into an awareness of something that Meister Eckhart said when he said, the eyes through which I see God are the eyes through which God sees me. There's not going to be a difference. It's just life. The Lord, love that. Love that Lord, or love that life. That is God. Now, let's get into the word heart, with all thy heart. What it meant, the root of that was passion and vitality. So it's not a, I love you. It's, I love you. I'm going to love. There's juice in this. So Hildegard of Bingen said that, I am filled with the juicy vitality of life. And mystics are not, they're like filled with the juicy vitality of life. And so they can go out and do great things, because the more you contemplate and love life, the more life will love living you. And it gets juicy. So here's an example. Take your Seattle 12 consciousness and put it towards life itself. Root for life. Root. I have a dream. I have a dream, brothers and sisters, and I have a dream that I will be the minister of a church of people who don't get colds ever again. Because we are so in love with life that life juices us up, and we express in a great way and that we are filled with that life to the place of healing. That's why I've got an idea. Let's go back to soul. With all thy soul. And so in this phrase, love the Lord thy God, or let's just say, love the life that is God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. And love your neighbor as yourself. Self and soul are the same word. They were divided up when they were translated, but they're the same word. Self and soul are the same word. What you are is a soul. You are a soul. Yourself is your soul. You don't have a soul. Do I have a soul? Does my pet have a soul? Yes. Why? Because that's what you are. And you took a body and you suited up. And you forgot, you thought this is you. No, this is just the costume for the moment. Because we are in a parenthesis, just a small slice of time. And this is it. We can lay this down and we'll pick up another one. Because we're soul. Love yourself, your soul, your essence, that life expression with a lot of passion and gusto, brothers and sisters, is what this is saying. Now, let's get into the word love, because this is great. This is important when I go on to the next thing, because we're not going to stay here with neighbors for very long. The word that they use for love is a definite word. It's R-E-H-A-M, for those of you that want to look it up. And that love meant compassion and caring for. A deep compassion and caring for. So we are to care for life, we're to care for our soul, we're to care for our neighbor. Caring. You care. for your neighbor. What's your neighbor? Neighbor was a specific word used when it was not your family or your friend. But you know who it really means? Whoever's in front of you. Your neighbor is who's in front of you. So if they're in front of you, they are your neighbor, and you are to care for them. That's all it meant. But there is a sort of a twist on this, because I love Middle Eastern languages, because one of the things Middle Eastern languages do is they have depth, 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 depth. So it's not just the person that's in front of you. If they take all of the syllables that went into this and you look at their roots, it's not just who's in front of you. Their belief was you drew them to you. Huh. Care for who you drew to you. You drew them so you could care for them. Who do you care for? Who's in front of you? How many of you are even afraid to look around to see who's around you? How many of you know you walk around with elevator consciousness? I'm not here, you're not here, hope the door opens soon. Well, JC said, we're really good friends. JC said, if you want to go to heaven, if you want a life that is full and rich, if you want to be lifted into a place where you're no longer afraid of anything, love your neighbor. Care for the person in front of you. Care about them. Be open-hearted with zest for them. Take a deep breath. I say that I had the opportunity to watch a video that Beverly shared with the staff, and it was one of her friends was talking about visiting Zappos corporate headquarters, and they said at the end of it they wanted to work there, even though they don't know what they would do there, but everyone would look up from their desk and smile at them. They were practicing loving their neighbor. You didn't walk through the office and be invisible. You were noticed and acknowledged just with a smile. That would make you feel cared for. Are we willing to care for each other? Now let's get to enemies. Because how many of you have heard, love your enemies? Don't try to forget you've heard it. How many of you have heard, love your enemies? Oh, I didn't hear that. No. No, no, you heard it. Now, enemies is a whole different matter, and so is the love required for loving your enemies, because the word translated into love is not the same word that was translated in love before. The love that you have for your neighbor is not the love that's called for when you're loving your enemies. Hey, sorry. In fact, I tried this out on First Service, and I kind of got through it, because this is going to sound a little bit of like junior high health class. But here we go. The word for love that is used for loving your enemies was a word that had a mystical and mysterious connotation to it. It was believed to be a force that could bring separate beings together to create a whole new reality. It was a force that would draw separateness together to create something new. The root word of this love was also the root word for sexual intercourse. So you kind of get the drift. Because even though two could come together and provide the raw material, they can't make life. Life makes life. So there's a mystery there. And this kind of love that's required for loving your enemy is a mystery. You don't know how it works, but it does. It's a force that draws together and makes something new. There's a Sufi saying that says, God is the receiver and the giver of love, as well as love itself. This is at the heart of this word. what my take on this is that the love that we need to love our enemies, we can't do. It's more than caring. It actually takes God to do something alchemaic. Did I say that right? To produce the kind of love that would allow you to love your enemy. Because the other love was about caring, and sometimes we just don't care. Right? Sometimes you just don't care. I just don't care. Don't want to love them. You can't make me love them. I don't want to love them. I don't care about them. You know, and it could be private. It could be someone in your life, a private little I don't care, or it could be a big I don't care. You know, in the world out there, there's a lot of big I don't cares, isn't there? Guess what? What's being called for every time someone has a big I don't care is an opening to a bigger idea of what love is, because love can create something totally new out of what enemies are. Guess what an enemy is? An enemy is nothing more, at least by the people who wrote this phrase, Jesus or somebody that was following him. Enemy only meant someone you're out of sync with. But we make it a big deal, and then they're different. We're just out of sync. They tango, you waltz. Dancing might be painful. You're out of sync. But God can take the tango dancer and the waltz dancer and create something. I'm sure it could. So do you see that that's really what's being called for, is that the out of sync find a way to create something new. Wow. When I think about how two things can create something new, it would be a whole new thing. I was thinking about when what was his name? Nasser? Was it the gentleman in Egypt who was the first of the Arab nations who said, I'm going to have a peace treaty with Israel? Sadat, yeah. Anwar Sadat. Two opposites. And out of that came together something that lasted for quite some time. It was the beginning of a new way of being in the Middle East that had never come before. Because I bet he really didn't care much about those people. But he was loved by God, and God loved through him. When you love God, when you start to do that other one, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, it will start to use you. And enemies will become neighbors. Shift will happen. Why is this important? Why is it not important? How are we going to be a stand for peace or love or cooperation or justice if we can't stand the love? Now, I want to say something about fear. Someone has said, in fact, a lot of people have quoted this, that fear is the opposite of love. That's impossible. Love has no opposite. Fear is what you feel when you're not willing to recognize the love. But fear has no force of its own. It has no power of its own except what we give it. But love is just waiting to show up, because it's got some power, brothers and sisters. I mean, I'm thinking about the life of some of the people we know. I'm thinking about the life of Gandhi, who eventually, it was the British soldiers themselves who said, we can't fight these people anymore. We refuse. The British government had to change because the people on the ground would not fight them. Why wouldn't they fight them? Because they refused to fight. Love is very powerful. Now, we want instant. We want Mac enlightenment. Drive through, change them. But that's not the way it works. But when we get overflowing with love, things will shift. They'll shift in your family, they'll shift in your workspace, and they'll shift in the world. But we can't let that out until we prove it to ourselves. So I'm going to do a little experiment with you. I did it first service. No one melted. I was, so afraid that, like one of the witches of Wizard of Oz, people would just melt away and there'd be puddles on the ground. But everyone walked out of here alive. So I will say that I gave this up about 15 to 18 years ago because a gentleman came up to me and said, I used to go to church, but I don't go anymore because you made us sing that song. In fact, every once in a while, you'll just make us sing that song. And I hate that song. I don't want to do that song. So I'm not coming to church unless you promise you'll never do it again. So I promised. I decided, out of my desire to be liked, I acquiesced to his smallness and his fright. But we're not doing that anymore, are we? Yay! So we're going to sing a song, and it goes like this. I love myself so much that I can love you so much. Now let's get this, I've got to get this clear. Why is that true? It's true because when I love myself so much, when I love my soul self, with vim and vigor, because it is the very life that I honor and I appreciate everywhere. If I can honor the life of a redwood, then I can honor the life of myself and everyone around me. But first, it's got to be me. I've got to love the Lord thy God, life itself, my God, as me. When I love myself that much, guess what? I have to love you so much. Because I'm so filled with love, I can't do anything else. I can't look at you and go, oh, you're different. We're out of sync. There's gaps in our ability to relate. You don't see a gap. Love doesn't see gaps. So I'll love you so much. And I'll love you so much that pretty soon, guess what? The love will splash on you and you'll start to love you so much. Because anybody that is filled with hate has no love for themselves. If you see somebody doing a hateful thing, you pray for them immediately. That is a call for prayer to love them, love them, love them, love them. Because they don't know how much they even hurt. And they're taking it out on the world. And they will never be able to put them away long enough for that to be healed, but love can do it. So heal it now. So I'll love you so much that you'll love you so much. Oh my gosh. And then you'll start loving me. So what I used to say is if you felt like it, you could stand up. But now I'm just saying, stand up. I love myself so much that I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, that you can start loving me. I love myself so much that I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, that you can start loving me. Now we get really scary, really scary. You might just acknowledge that there is actually other people in the room. Brothers and sisters, I hate to break it to you, but you are surrounded by other people. And they are your neighbors. Hello, neighbor. So you might actually say to someone else, I love myself so much that I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, that you can start loving me. Give it a try. Go at your own pace. I love myself so much that I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, that you can start loving me. One more time. I love myself so much that I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, that you can start loving me. And so I just give thanks for this energy. I give thanks for this energy. I give thanks for this truth. I give thanks that everyone can sit down if they choose. I give thanks that we have opened ourselves as a collective body to the love of God at a deeper and more powerful way. That we are realizing that we are not asked to just love our next door neighbor. We are asked to love those around us. We are asked to love even those who are hard to love. But those who are hard to love, oh, what a great opportunity, because then we get to say, God, I can't do this. I just don't even care. Please love through me. And the presence and the power of love says, yay and oh man, I've been waiting for this moment. Look out, because here I come. And then woof, and something happens to us. Love changes us. Love changes everything. I am so grateful that we are open and willing to be the presence of God right where we are as love, just by deciding over and over and over again to love. And in those decisions is the experience of heaven. I speak my word for every person in this room that they are blessed by love, whether they know it or not. They are cherished by the very heart of God, whether they know it or not. The universe is in conspiracy for their good, whether they know it or not. And that this is the beginning of more cracks in our heart, so that the love of God may shine forth and seep in. Praise God. And so it is. The ushers are coming forward. And while they are doing that, I want to recognize our new altar. The last one was done by Alinda and Reverend Michael. This altar is done by Mitra and Gita. Both of them are from Persia. So I asked, well, what would an Iranian Islamic altar look like? And they said, what we really like is the Persian New Year. So this is a Persian New Year altar with food up there and just the way of celebrating the beauty of life. So let's just take a moment to love and bless our gift, to recognize its power, 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 power. Your love, your gift has power, power to ignite this group of people so that we are on fire with love. But the fire of love doesn't burn anything. It just lights stuff up. So I give thanks that we are truly letting our light shine this day and every day. I bless the gift. I bless the giver. I bless the receiver, which is all of us. And I bless all of us who are here this day. May the light of love shine brightly through all the areas of our life. And so it is.